Start the recording. All right. Hey everyone. Good evening again. So welcome to the Android application security testing. And from the previous session, let's have a small recap on what we have done so far. So in the previous session, we worked. Okay. So if you're able to look at my screen now, so we looked at a bunch of tools for reverse engineering, mainly tools like APK tool, Dex2Jar, JDGUI, and SQLite for DB browser. SQLite DB browser. Okay, so we did reverse engineering using APK tool. So we used a particular flag, which is D, which is mainly for decompilation. So we are able to decompile the APK file using the APK tool and the D flag or the D, the decompiler flag. Okay, so once we decompiled, we got a pretty good file structure, a basic file structure, of that application, wherein we were able to see Android manifest.xml file, a library folder, the main original folder, inside which we also had the older manifest file, and we also had another pretty interesting folder called meta-inf, which basically had certificate related tools like cert.rsa, cert.sf, and manifest.mf. Okay, so just to again sort of bring your memories back, sort of refresh your memories. Cert.sf and manifest.mf pretty much have the same content in both these files. Why do they have pretty similar content and all that? We can keep that particular discussion for the next upcoming sessions, but for now let's understand that these two files are pretty same. Okay, then we also had the resource folder, the smali folder, the apk tool.yml file, which is the configuration file for the apk tool. More on the smali folder and the resource folder at a later stage. Resource folder, I think I gave a pretty good a small brief introduction about it, that it contains all the files that are related to that application. Okay, the bunch of other tools that we used were dex2jar, which basically helps us to convert either the .dex file or .apk file into .jar file. Okay, so the command that we used was d2j-dex2jar space the file.apk. So once we got the .jar file, we were able to we were able to view the jar file using JDGUI file, JDGUI tool. Okay, so one thing that I had also mentioned to remember is that any application specific resource and the data is stored in the /data/data folder. Okay, so let's continue back again with today's new topics. So we'll be looking at bunch of other different things, vulnerabilities and all of them. So let's get our virtual machine started, our emulator. Okay, so here we go, it's starting. So we are gonna be looking at bunch of new things today. So I've got few apps from the App Store here. As you could see here, we have the Google app and the Twitter app. So we'll also look into their certificates and see what kind of information we get out of them. We'll mainly be looking at how the certificate files usually look like, what are all its contents and all of them, why are they useful, and how for a security researcher it would be useful. Okay, and before that, we'll be also looking at a bunch of other security issues inside our Diva application. Okay, so if you could remember, last time we were able to do things like hard coding issues, insecure data storage 1, 2, and 3. I also asked you guys to sort of go ahead and do a small homework on the insecure data storage part 4. Okay, so which I'll be sort of showing you guys today how it is exactly done. Okay, so let's open up our terminal on the other hand. Let me clear the screen. So if you guys could remember, the basic commands that we used were adb space devices, which will tell us which device is currently connected to our system or how many devices are connected to our system. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do adb space shell, which will give me access into this device. And okay, so let me just increase the size of the font size. Okay, I hope this is visible. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is get into the insecure data storage part 4. If you guys could remember, the first three places where the data was insecurely stored was in the database, was in the shared preferences folder, and the third one was in, if I remember, it was in a temporary file, right? So in the fourth place of storage, let's see where this gets stored exactly. So I'm gonna say secret 1234. Okay, secret username. This is secret password 1234. I'm going to save this. It says that the third-party credentials have been saved successfully. So I really don't know at this point of time where exactly these credentials are getting stored. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my JD GUI. Okay, so we have already have the JD GUI opened up. So in the insecure data storage uh, uh, dot class, the fourth one, if we sort of go through the code, even if you're not kind of well versed with the Java, specific code, if you just look at the places, couple of here and there, you will get to see that, you'll kind of understand a bunch of different things, such as, it says there's a new file that is getting created here, which is /uinfo.txt. Okay, and it makes a toast once it gets saved, that third party credential saved successfully, and all of that. Okay, so there is a log that is generated if there is an error, and all of that. Okay, so what we could do is we could go ahead and search for different places, but if you also get to see, there is an external storage directory that is being invoked here. Okay, so it kind of gives me a sense that, okay, maybe this file is getting stored in the SD card area or the external storage. So now that we have gotten into the device, let's do an ls. It will list all the different sort of the file structure here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a cd space mnt, which is mount. I get in here and then I do an ls. Then there I see a bunch of different folders again. I also see something called SD card. What I'm going to do is do cd space SD card. I'll get into this. I'll clear the screen. So you may be a little confused at this point of time, thinking, "Hey, you told us that application-specific data usually gets stored in /data/data," but again, it also the applications also have the option of storing any data, such as something like a text file or some sort of a media file elsewhere, including the SD cards. Okay, so we could store these external files in the SD cards. So let me do an ls and see if we have a file here. We don't really get to see any file here though as such, but if we go back and look at our uh, the JD GUI, we'll see that it is saying that it is .uinfo.txt file. So which means that when they add the dot prefix before the file, it kind of sort of it becomes a hidden file. Okay, it becomes a hidden file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an ls space minus l. So I'm still not able to see my file. So what I'm going to do, ls space minus l space, I know the file name in which it is getting stored. If I am sure, it's uinfo.txt, right? Let me copy this. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste this here. So I see that .uinfo.txt is present here. So what I'll do, I'll do a basic cat command to open this up. Okay, so here we go. So here we get to see that the secret username 1234 and secret password 1234 is getting stored on the external storage, which is SD card. Okay, so again the problem here is the insecure way of storing this is that they're getting stored in the normal plain text. Okay, so that's one of the insecure ways of storing the data. Okay, so that's one, that's the one that I wanted you guys to sort of look around and sort of find it. If you have found it, that's amazing, really amazing. I would really want you guys to sort of go into the comment section and sort of comment saying that we have also done this. Okay. If not, I think this was like a pretty good introduction on how we could have done it. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is the insecure logging. Okay, so insecure logging, for this, let me just exit out of the device. Okay, so in the insecure logging, what really happens is whatever credentials that the user enters on the application should never be logged anywhere. So when I say log, there are something called as system logs, there are something called as application specific logs. Okay, so these logs basically contain a lot of data about what's really happening with the application or in the application. Okay, so these data should never really contain things like passwords or usernames or something like that's very critical kind of information. Something like your credit card number is a very critical data that should never be kept in any system logs or application logs. Okay, so let's see if we are able to find, if we sort of give a credit card number and we say check out, or we sort of click on this button. Let's see if it is getting logged on this side. Okay, for this I'm going to be using a dummy credit card number. Okay, so if you go to Google and just type in dummy credit card numbers, you will get a bunch of a list of different credit card numbers. Okay, which are like you could just randomly use them anywhere you want. Okay, so let me paste it here. Before that, I'm going to do a small command called adb space logcat. So when I do this, the logcat starts running. It's again it's again a command line for adb itself, which tells which kind of logs whatever is happening on this particular device. So I'm going to click on checkout. You will see that the data has got logged. So I'm just going to do a command control Z. Okay, so if we go here, it says error while processing transaction with credit card, and it gives you the actual credit card number itself. So let's just try comparing it. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. It's the same credit card number here as well, right? So this is something that usually shouldn't be happening. This kind of credentials or any critical data should never be logged onto either the system logs or the application logs. So this was one part of it. Okay, so we'll get into the other stuffs as well, but before that I wanted to show you another thing regarding the application certificate. So yesterday when we opened, sort of when we decompiled this application Diva beta, and we got into the original folder and the meta-inf folder, we found that there were three different set of files. Okay, the sir.sf and manifest.mf, as I've said, that these two files are quite similar. Let me sort of make a list. You see that these two have same file size as well. Okay, but if you open it with a basic text editor, these would usually open up. Okay, but the cert.rsa is an encrypted file. Okay, so if I try opening it up with a normal text editor file, you will see that this is like pretty much like a garbage value that you will get to see here. Okay, there's like you can't really understand anything out of this, which means that this file is completely encrypted. What you could do here is there are a bunch of tools that you could use to sort of get to see what is really inside this particular file of an application. Okay, so let's try and see how this is done. For this, let me write it down, what the tool that we are going to be using for today. uh, okay, so tool that we are going to be using today is called key tool. Okay, so first let's use this for, okay, so since we are already here, I'm going to open up my terminal to clear this off. I'm going to do an ls. I'll get into my desktop. Okay, then I get into the original folder, then again I do an ls, I get into the meta-inf folder. Okay, then here we have the cert.rsa. So how do we open it? We are going to be using the key tool. So the command line for this, you will get to see, when you type in key tool. So this usually comes, pre-built with your Java installation or your Android Studio installation itself. Okay, so you don't really have to sort of explicitly go on and sort of install it. That's one thing. So these are a bunch of different commands that we could try out. The one specific one that we are using today is, let me write it down, key tool space minus print cert space minus file space cert dot rsa. So when we do this, we are basically saying, hey key tool, you need to print the certificate, minus print cert for printing the certificate, minus file is where you specify the file name that you want to print. Okay, so we click on the enter. So you will get to see a lot of different data, or that that is specific to this particular application from its certificate file. So you will get to see who's the owner, who's the issuer, what is the serial number of this particular certificate, what is its validity, when is it valid, and when it would get expired. Okay, the certificate fingerprints like the SHA1, the SHA256, and all of that. These are something related to the cryptography part. We'll be learning much deeper about them in the upcoming classes. Okay, so signature algorithm, what is the algorithm that is used to sort of build this particular certificate. Now we are using SHA-256 with RSA encryption. Okay, then there is something called subject public key algorithm. So what is the public key algorithm that's being used, which is 2048-bit RSA key. Okay, so you get to see a lot of different data that is very specific to this particular certificate of that application. Okay, so this was one example that I gave. I could sort of go on and try with other applications as well, for which I need to sort of get access to the certificate file of that application. What I'm going to do, let's go back to our desktop. If I do an ls, there is a folder called apps where I have gotten new applications. I do an ls. So there are two different apps. There is one Google application and there is one Twitter application. So what I would do is first, using APK tool, reverse it, simple as this. So let's wait until it gets you know one till it gets decompiled completely. You will eventually you will actually get to see that what are the different things that it is doing. And let's just wait, it's almost over. So it's backsmalling classes.dex files, which means that you will get to see the classes.dex files in this. So in the previous example that we have used diva beta, there was only one class here, but here we get to see a lot of different dex files with respect to those classes. Okay, so now it's completely done. So let me just clear the screen now. So let's get into the folder. I do an ls. There is an original folder here as well. Let me get into that. There will be a meta-inf. I do an ls. So here again we have cert.rsa. What I'm going to do is use the key tool space minus print cert space minus file space cert.rsa. Click enter. So you will get to see who is the owner, who is the issuer. It says Google, the location is Mountain View, California, US, the serial number of this particular certificate, when is it valid from, and the certificate fingerprints, the signature algorithms, and everything else that you will get to see. Okay, so this is this is like pretty much about the certificate file. The reason why we would use certificate files, why we would look into the certificate files, is a different story, which I'm going to be sort of explaining in the further upcoming sessions. The thing about the Android application is that the certificate files usually could be manipulated, because it is self-signed certificate. When I say self-signed, there is no authority that is giving these certificates. So the application creator himself could create these kind of certificates and say, hey boss, I have written this particular application. Okay, so the problem here is that once the application is out in the market or out in the Play Store, someone else could download it, unpack it, and then add their malicious code into the application, and then repackage it, and with the same and with a particular certificate. And okay, so once they do that, it kind of the application could be installed in anyone's phone. Okay, so that kind of creates a serious security issue from the Android applications perspective. Okay, so we'll be getting much deeper into this, and I just wanted to sort of give you guys a heads up on how this is done and all of that, as we'll be doing it in the further classes, in the next upcoming classes. So coming back to our Diva. Okay, so we have a bunch of other vulnerabilities that we have got. So there is one on input validation issue. Okay, so it says that objective is to try to access all the user data without knowing any username. So there are 3 users by default, and our task is to basically output data of all these 3 users with single malicious search. Okay, so one thing that I know here is one of the users name is Diva. So when I just do a search here, okay, it says user not found. I don't know, it's pretty weird usually. Okay, user John is also not found. So usually we have these user in the application pre-built. But what I'm going to again do is go back to my JDGUI, get into the one that says input validation. Okay, input validation. Okay, so trying to understand the way these things are built. Okay, so if I'm not able to get any much data here, what I could do is, since it most of the data here that is being stored, it says it is about a particular user. So I'm going to try and see how it would respond to a particular uh, SQL query or something that is related to SQL. Okay, so we were able to find this. So when I do Diva here, it says okay, user Diva, password is password, credit card is this. Okay, so it was able to show me the details of this, but how will I be able to get the complete data from this search bar? So what I'm going to do is just try to sort of break this query. Okay, so let me just give you a small introduction of how this querying works. Let me open this up. The SQL query. So if you guys are quite familiar with the SQL query, the backend query would usually work like whenever I give a username here, something like Diva, the backend query will be select star from the database let's say users, where the username equals this. Okay, so here when I say diva, it's gonna search for diva and sort of give me from the database that particular diva usernames data. Okay, so here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of break this query using some SQL parameters, something like if I what will happen if I sort of give a single quotation. So the application would think that okay, so there is nothing that is given between the first two quotations, and it would sort of throw an error. Okay, but here we see it's kind of not throwing any sort of an error. So what I'll again try to do is I'll sort of use a logically true statement. So here what I did was, so I used a quotation space space or 1 equals 1 minus minus. So when I do this, so what will really happen is either the first username will be considered, or 1 equals 1 minus minus. So this means that it will either consider if the username is present, or it will consider if 1 equals 1. So 1 equals 1 is a logically true statement, so it would consider this. And the minus minus in SQL mainly means that anything after minus minus is commented out. Okay, it won't really be considered. So since 1 equals 1, the complete statement becomes true. So it's going to go with select star from users where username where 1 equals 1, which means that it's going to show up all the users that are currently present in this in the database. So this is fairly simple. The reason why these happen is there is no set of validations that is given here on the user on the input fields here. Okay, so these kind of things keep happening in a lot of applications. Okay, so this is one of it. Another one, let's look into the second one, which is the input validation. Okay, so here it says that try accessing any sensitive information apart from a web URL. Okay, so before that, let's sort of write down what are the other things that we have done for today. So one is the input validation. Okay, wherein, so this is the one. Let's copy this, let's paste it here. The third one we did was the Logcat one. The Logcat one we did even before this. Okay, so wherein we used adb Logcat command to sort of get the logs and insecure storage for insecure logging for credentials and critical data such as credit card details. Okay, so now the fourth one that we are going to be doing here is the input validation issues. Okay. Okay, so here we get to see that there is a URL. Let's type in some URL and see what really happens. When I click on view, that particular website loads up. Okay, so when I just typed in google.com, it sort of loaded the google.com's website here. So the way how this is trying to do is it uses a component called as web views. Okay, so web views basically allows the application to sort of view any web pages on the mobile application itself. Okay, so let's say there is there is an application that kind of allows the user to sort of enter any URL like this, and it would sort of fetch that URL and give it to the user. Or there is some function in the application that is trying to do this kind of a fetching of the URL. Okay, so one thing we really need to understand is if it is able to fetch a URL that is outside of the application, what if we try to fetch something that is inside the device or inside the application? Okay, so if you guys are getting a little confused here, that's totally fine. I'll tell you how exactly this is done. Okay, so we are going to be using something called as the file command here, which is if you want to access a particular file, so we are going to be using this file colon double slash. Instead of the HTTP or HTTPS, we are going to use this kind of a mechanism. Okay, so here let's try and see if we are able to access the shared preferences of this particular application, which is Diva Beta. Okay, so as we all remember, the data usually gets stored in /data/data /com dot I think it's totally different with Diva. Let's look at what is it. It's jackal.asim.diva. Let's write it down. Okay, dot diva slash shared underscore refs slash I think we'll have to sort of get into the application and see what is it if we are able to access it. Okay, let's do an adb space shell. I'll get into the cd data slash data. I do an ls. Okay, so this is the XML file, right? So let's try and see if we are able to pull this file out. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this. Since that we have written this down, let me copy this. View. Okay, so when I click on view, it is able to fetch the contents of the shared preferences of of this file jaka.asim.diva preferences.xml. If you could remember, yesterday we had stored our username and password in in one of the insecure data storage places, which is the shared preferences. Okay, so it is it is able to sort of extract this particular data. Okay, so in the similar lines, there is one more place that I had stored a particular secret key or something. So what I'm gonna do is let me do ls. I'll get into the SD card. So in the SD card of this particular device, we have a text file which is secret.txt. Okay, so let's try and see if we are able to sort of access this particular file. Okay, so the way this could be done is file colon sd card slash secret dot txt. Okay, we'll try this out if you are able to get it or no. Usually sometimes if the file is really huge, it may not be able to sort of show up. Okay, so maybe since the file is pretty huge, I think it's not kind of showing up the file. Yeah, but usually if we if we're able to sort of get access to these kind of shared preferences and all of that, then I think it's fairly easy to sort of extract any a particular file or something out of that is within the devices boundaries. Okay, so this was one of the insecure ways of input validation. Okay, so again, the application is not really checking what kind of an input the user is giving, and it is straight away parsing it without any sort of second ways of checking within the application. Okay, so that's one part of it. Let's go back and see what else we could be able to do. Let's look into the hard coding issues. So the reason why I skipped the access control issues was it's a bit pretty hard at this point of time for you guys to sort of get into it because it needs some level of understanding in a much deeper way. We'll get there anyways as we move ahead with the classes, with the sessions. So for now, let's go with the hard coding issues part 2. Okay, so in the previous one, if you could remember yesterday, we were able to sort of get the hard coded password from the source code and then enter it here. So let's see if it is in the similar way. So let's open up our JDG UI. So there is hardcode activity. So the first one, if you remember, vendor secret key was the secret key. Okay. So in the similar way, uh, here if we kind of try to read the code, now it says access granted you on the other side. If this particular thing is done, else it sort of says access denied to you and all that. So here, if we actually kind of get to see, there is a particular file that says there's a class that is diva jni. Okay, if we try opening this up, diva jni, this is like a string. uh, it is trying to search for some sort of a string. It is trying to search for from a particular library. Okay, it says system.load library diva jni. Okay, so this is going to be a little difficult for us to search in the library files, but let's go ahead and try it. Let's give it a shot. So remember the name diva jni. Okay, we may be able to find something in the similar lines. Okay, so what we are going to be doing is okay, so for that we need to be opening our terminal. Let me clear this. Let me exit this. Okay, so right now I need to come out into the desktop. Okay, I do an ls. There is diva beta folder. Okay, inside this there is a folder called as lib, which is for libraries. If you remember, when we decompiled it, we got to see all of this. Okay, so let me do a cd space lib. Let me get into this ls. So when I do this, let me do ls minus l. Okay, so this kind of gives me the content of all these subfolders. Okay, so we have lib library dib ajni dot so. So there are these are files with the similar names. We could try and open them up. Let's get into one of them. Let's open this one, ARM64 hyphen. I do an ls. So here I'm going to do strings space. So when the strings command will search for all the strings that are specific to this that is part of this particular library file. Okay, so here one thing is that I need to sort of copy paste all of these different strings that we are able to see. I know this is a pretty big hassle here, wherein we're going to copy paste all of these and try it out. Okay, let's try it out and see if any of them works. So I pasted the first one. No, it says no. So I'm going to paste the second one. It says no again. So I think here let's go in the random sequence, just in case something works. It's great. Let me paste this here. Okay, it's not getting pasted. So let's take something like this. Let's try with this. I'm gonna copy this, paste, access. Okay, so we are lucky here. So when I click on access, it says access granted. See you on the other side. Okay, so this again was an hard-coded issue. Okay, if you sort of remember that what we did was we basically looked into the library files of this application. Okay, so since we were not lucky in finding the password in the source code itself, it was present in one of the library files and in one of the strings of the library files. Okay, so let's write it down. So whatever we have done so far. So fifth one is the hard coding issues. Okay, part two, wherein we were able to sort of find the hard coded data in the libraries library strings. Okay, so this all of these is something that we tried today. We also did try something else today, which is looking into the certificate files that we haven't listed here. So though we have the tool listed, so let's write it down. Okay, so what we did, the command line was key tool space minus print cert space minus file space the cert.rsa. So this cert.rsa is varies based on the different set of applications that you are using. So there are instances where a couple of applications save it as some other file name. It does not necessarily have to be cert.rsa. I know usually this is a naming convention that is followed, but it could be something else as well. Okay, so when you click this, when you type this, it should be able to give all the data about the certificate. Okay, so this is something that we had for today. Okay, so just kind of going back and seeing what all we have done. So we did the input validation part, wherein we sort of gave the SQL queries, and we broke the SQL queries by giving in some SQL related data, made it logically true, and we were hence able to get the usernames and passwords and all the data about the users. Okay, then we found something with the application logs, wherein there was insecure logging that was done. We used this tool called ADB Logcat. Okay, so the second tool, let me write down here. Though ADB Logcat is part of the ADB itself, but it's good we write it down here. Okay, so insecure logging for credentials and critical data such as credit card details, we are able to get the credit card details right away. Okay, so the next one was the input validation issues, where we're able to sort of manipulate the URL link to find a file that is within the application or the device. We were able to successfully do this, right? Then the hard coding part, we are able to find the hard coded data in the library strings. Okay, so these were bunch of things that we were able to do for today. So in the upcoming sessions, we'll be looking at a couple of other things, like let's say access control issues as well, and input validation, uh, third one, part 3. Okay, so here our goal will be to sort of basically DDoS this application and sort of crash this application. Okay, DOS this application and crash. So what is a DOS attack and all of that, we'll surely get to learn them in the next sessions. Okay, so the homework for you guys is, what I would suggest is, go ahead and sort of look at all the different applications that you have on your phone. Try to print their cert.rsa files. Okay, so now it's become quite easier for you to decompile it using APK tool. It's very straightforward. You just decompile it, get into the meta-inf folder, and look at the cert.rsa file. and just go ahead and look at the certificate file. So it's very straightforward. Using the key tool, you should be able to do it. If you have Java installed, or if you have your Android Studio installed on your device, it becomes a lot more easier, because that the key tool usually comes with that. Okay, you do not really have to explicitly install it. So I think that's it about with this today's presentation. I hope you guys have liked it. Do go on and do go ahead and comment. What do you guys feel? If you guys got stuck somewhere or anything as such, we are surely be we should we are surely be able to sort of help you guys out, and sort of in any issues that you get. Okay, so I think that's it from my side. Uh, Karthik, just wanted to let you know that I'm done with the session for today. So any queries or questions from your side, guys, go on and sort of put it out in the the comments or the chat section. I'll be happy to take them up either now, or you could send us a mail, or you could put it up in the comment section. I think Karthik is busy, I guess. Okay, it's okay. So it's really good to see a lot of them coming up here and sort of being part of this training. And I really hope that this training has sort of added some value to your current professional life. And yeah, let's I wish to see you guys in the upcoming sessions as well. So I'll be taking any questions or any queries that you have regarding this course or any part of the content as well. You guys could be able to sort of easily mail us, and we should be able to help you out.